It was supposed to be a voyage of hope, a humanitarian mission, but instead, drones turned the sky into a battlefield. On September 8th, 2025, the Global Sumud Flotilla, determined to carry food and medical supplies to Gaza, was suddenly attacked from above. A drone strike sparked a fire aboard one of the aid boats and sent fear racing across the decks. The incident exposed how quickly civilian voyages can become entangled in the contested currents of modern warfare. Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive from Naval Brief. The flotilla was never about naval strength. It wasn't a fleet of destroyers or missile frigates. It was a symbol, a multinational convoy sailing under the banner of solidarity. These were not soldiers. They were ordinary civilians, doctors, aid workers, lawyers, and seasoned campaigners determined to make a statement through presence, not force. Their mission: to deliver food, medical kits, and to challenge a blockade that has gripped Gaza for over 17 years. For the organizers, Sumud, the Arabic word for steadfastness, meant that Gaza could not simply be isolated into silence. The convoy was a floating message that the world still saw and still cared. Activists in the Global Sumud Flotilla argue the Gaza blockade, imposed since 2007 by Hamas, is illegal under international law and has pushed 2 million Palestinians into prolonged crisis. After Hamas's October 2023 attacks and the war that followed, the grip became suffocating. Restrictions tightened even further with shortages of clean water, power blackouts, crossings closed for long stretches, and medical supplies dwindled, and by 2025 UN agencies were warning of famine. Health officials cautioned that the risk of disease is rising rapidly for Gazans, driven by damaged sanitation systems, unsafe water, and crowded conditions. For flotilla members, they argued the siege wasn't just harsh security policy, but collective punishment, an illegal blockade that cut off food, medicine, and freedom of movement, leaving 2 million civilians trapped in what rights groups call an open-air prison. That was the backdrop as the convoy set out in late August with about 20 vessels. The Mediterranean Sea quickly tested them. Delays, rough seas, and breakdowns thinned the group to 18 by the time they reached Tunisia's port of Sidi Bou Said on September 7th. But the real test came the next day, sooner than anyone expected. On September 8th, while docked in Sidi Bou Said, witnesses described small craft buzzing just above mast height before diving suddenly. One boat, later identified as the family boat, was struck. Flames flared briefly before the crew managed to douse them with fire hoses. No one was reported injured, but the terror was real. These were unarmed civilians, jolted into crisis without warning. Flotilla veterans had long braced for what comes at sea. Warships cutting across their bows, patrol boats ramming their hulls, naval cordons hemming them in, even boarding parties storming their decks. Those were the risks they signed up for. But to be hit in port before the journey had even truly begun raised the danger to an entirely new level. For those on board, the fire was more than a material setback. It was psychological warfare. The message was clear. Even tied up to a pier hundreds of miles from Gaza, these boats were not safe. The activists were not safe. And their mission, while symbolic, had entered the battlefield of drones, surveillance, and targeted intimidation. Tunisian officials at first denied any attack had taken place, insisting nothing unusual had been recorded in their waters. But video footage soon surfaced, showing a drone dropping an incendiary device that sparked a fire on deck. Faced with mounting evidence, Tunisia reversed course and announced it was opening an investigation. The fact that the attacks happened on Tunisian soil complicated matters. Was this a breach of sovereignty? Who launched the drones? And why now? On September 9th, a second boat, the Alma, sailing under a British flag, was targeted while also docked in Tunisian waters. Again, drones were seen circling before a strike set parts of the deck ablaze. Once again, fires were extinguished quickly, but the symbolism was impossible to miss. The flotilla hadn't even reached open waters, and already it was under aerial assault. 2 boats, 2 attacks in 2 days, both in Tunisian ports, neither in contested waters. Symbolism could not be ignored. The blockade, already enforced by warships and patrols at sea, had expanded into the realm of drones. Activists were quick to accuse Israel, citing its extensive use of drones for surveillance and deterrence. Israeli officials gave no confirmation, and mainstream coverage inside the country was minimal. In drone warfare, attribution can be as contested as the skies themselves. Still, the point was made. No aid boat, no activist, no banner of peace would be allowed to interrupt the blockade. This wasn't the first time such missions turned dangerous. In 2010, the world watched in global outrage when Israeli commandos raided the Mavi Marmara, a Turkish ship carrying aid and activists. To the world's shock, 10 activists were left deceased. Since then, flotillas have continued to challenge the blockade, each voyage a refusal to let an entire people be sealed off from the world. For activists, the voyages carry moral weight. For Israel, they represent a security threat. That clash of narratives has defined every launch. And in September 2025, drones added a new, chilling chapter. Reactions spread quickly. In Ankara, officials condemned the strikes outright, describing them as an assault on civilians and humanitarian activism. Coverage inside Israel was brief, largely noting the flotilla as part of ongoing security concerns. But the most powerful response came from the imagery itself. Videos of drones swooping low, smoke rising from decks, and activists scrambling to contain the fire spread across social media. Those clips shaped public opinion far faster than official statements ever could. Whoever sent the attack, their plan backfired. Beyond the politics, the incidents raised questions for maritime security. If aid boats can be harassed this way, what about tankers, ferries, or fishing fleets? The Mediterranean is already crowded with NATO patrols, Russian vessels, and regional coast guards. Adding drones into the mix, cheap, fast, and often anonymous, normalizes drones as tools of intimidation at sea. Analysts noted that the Sumud Flotilla faced one of the first recorded cases of drone harassment directed against humanitarian ships. That precedent could reshape expectations for future activism at sea. Part propaganda, part military signal, all dangerous. The flotilla, though shaken, pressed forward. Organizers announced that more vessels would join in the coming weeks, swelling their numbers despite the risks. They framed the attacks not as deterrence, but as proof of how far opponents were willing to go to stop them. If they fear even our small boats, one activist wrote, then we must be doing something right. For naval watchers, the lesson was sobering. Drones aren't just weapons of war. They are now tools of intimidation, reshaping the way maritime disputes are fought. From the perspective of international law, the targeting of civilian-age ships is a gray area. But from the perspective of those on deck, the reality was black and white. The blockade followed them everywhere, even into the skies. By mid-September, the flotilla had stretched across the Mediterranean in fragmented groups. Some gathered near Pantelleria, others staged from Sicilian ports, still more pressed eastward from Greece. Their numbers had thinned, but their determination had not. The incidents brought more attention to their mission, and the images spoke louder than any press release. They told the world that even unarmed ships, even civilians bearing bandages instead of bullets, could become targets in contested seas. That is the chilling legacy of September's events. The normalization of drones as tools of intimidation at sea. Yet still, their mission sails on, and the world is left to watch what comes next. This is Naval Brief, your briefing room for sea power and defense analysis. If you're all hands on deck for real naval operations, maritime conflict, and global defense, subscribe and stay mission ready for the next briefing.